I'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have roll call, please.
Yes.
Salvi?
Yes.
Phillipson? Yes. Miller?
Yes.
Mayor Beat?
Yes. Citizens' comments. Brian, are you here for the university softball complex? Okay. I guess, yeah, if you're ready to go, we'll just do that.
Sounds good. I think in your packets or electronically you have this, but if you want to take a hard copy, you can do that. So, John Herman from the University of Minnesota Morris. We've been talking with the high school, and so I'll back up and just tell you a little bit about kind of the history on this project. This year, our college baseball team is going to start to play at Chiswick Field, which is really a wonderful opportunity for us to use an asset that the city has, and everybody can play on one field, including the high school. With that decision, we're looking at our softball park, and what was determined is we knew we had some work to do on our softball field, and so I'm looking at the investment that we need to make there. We started some conversations with the high school, and what we have talked about is that the high school is also lacking a softball field, and that there's a shortage of actual softball fields in town. And so we brought together this proposal to the school board. And if you take a look at the front page is basically the overall vision for the project. If you flip to the first page, there's on the first phase would be a new main field. And so if you look at the picture there, you can see that where Prairie Lane and that's kind of the current field is. If you look at this, at the second image, you can see where the current softball fields are. So there's two, we call them recreational fields that are there right now. They're probably the last that ever get used because they're usually the wettest, so they don't dry out as fast, and they don't have dugouts or anything like that. They just have fencing and they don't have any like outfield fencing or anything like that unless we put in a temporary fence. So you can see that this is where the proposed location of the current and the intramural field would be, and where the new main field and the new second field would go. So you can kind of see how that lays out in existence of what is right there right now. And the third phase of this project would be the construction of a bathroom with a little concession stand and some storage in the press box above. So right now, all the fields there are used during the summer, and we have put in a couple portable restrooms. The only challenge is we often have to put one of the portable restrooms across the road, and so you have little kids running across the road. And it's always a challenge to have the number of people that are there, and then there's a little portable restrooms that exist. And so this would allow us to construct a restroom, so there'd be two restrooms, and then a little bit of, like I said, concession stand storage, one facility. We'd have water and sewer out there, so we would be able to make those be permanent. And the fourth phase of this project would be to change the last field, so our current softball field, and then also add a parking lot, and then we would make another green space, kind of recreational field that would be there. So the whole project, you can see the cost as we go along. Each field is about $280,000 based on the estimates, and construction would be about $200,000. In working with the school board, they have strongly requested, we had left this in 4 phases, they strongly requested that really phase 1 is 2 fields and the bathroom and the restroom and press box, just because they need 2 fields at one time for varsity softball and junior varsity softball at the same time. It would also, it creates an opportunity for us to have more tournaments and different things like that if we have 2 fields at we technically would have 3 fields even without the construction of the last field. So this would, like I said, create an opportunity for us to have a softball park that we could really be proud of and attract tournaments. And we have a long history in the community of really, really good softball teams and really good facilities for baseball. And like I said, good softball teams, good opportunity to have a community partnership that would involve the city, the university, and the high school. We're grateful in the fact that we've been able to have some shared use facilities, so the Regional Fitness Center, Big Cat Stadium, and the track are shared use, and that's been just outstanding for everybody involved. And I think the thing that I like about this project is people who are kindergartners all the way to college seniors playing on the same field. So it's an opportunity to really love it. We would put in lights so they would be available for evening play, so that I know one of the things that is a challenge sometimes is scheduling all the community rec, baseball, softball leagues, and different things like that to happen after 5 o'clock and get them done in time before it's too dark. And so this would allow some more opportunity to get some more fields. So now I'll open it up for questions.
Would this get to be used by community ed in, for like,
Yeah,
Little League,
absolutely.
Little League baseball, Little League softball?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yep, it'd be set up to be used for all the Little League softball, and then also Community Ed. Community Ed runs a Little League that they use on these fields all summer long, and I think they had well over a couple hundred kids in there last year, and so it would be used for that as well. So used during the daytime and then for the Little League and softball leagues and stuff like that in the evening.
Blaine.
This wouldn't be able to be used for Babe Ruth though, would it? Baseball, that's gotta go to Chiswick or to the other fields out there.
Yeah, just because of the fence, the distance.
The distance, okay, sure, okay.
But then you could bring the softball field, which is out there over here, so everybody's in, softball's in one location and baseball's in one location for high school and college.
Yeah.
And then all fields, I'm sure, would be used for community ed.
Because right now, they put a temporary fence for softball out there because the fence is for Babe Ruth and for, I think, recreation softball leagues. Solbridge.
You know, first of all, I like the shared concept idea. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I don't know if anybody could argue that our fields need an upgrade, but a couple of observations on the proposal. That new interior parking lot there looks a little, I don't know if you'd really say inadequate, or I think it's going to accommodate some of the parking, but it looks like it's not going to resolve that whole complete issue with the parking. I think you're still going to have to use parking on the west side there of the road, so you're still going to have some traffic going across the road. Am I correct on that, Brian?
Yeah, we tried to get in as many parking spaces as we could. If there was a tournament or something, like if all 3 fields are being used, we likely would not have enough parking space there. But then people could use the east parking lot we have there, but we'd be able to manage the location, so we'd be able to make sure that everybody's crossing in just one location. And the other thing, the issue with our current field is that it sits right on the road, and that to me, I don't like it because there's a foul ball, and you fall ball right into the road, and so you got people chasing it, or you got families that trying to cross the road, and everybody just crosses in any of those spots. This we'd be able to manage and put a crosswalk there, so that's a good question.
Blaine, you had put a estimated cost of $760,000. That's just for the 3 fields, right?
For the 2 fields and the press box.
Yeah, 280, and 200.
What kind of a time frame, Brian, are you working
Okay.
with? When were you hoping to get started on this?
We're really hoping to get started this summer so that we can construct the summer to be able to play for next spring. So we need to be able to get everything seeded in fall, and then we start growing so that when it hopefully becomes spring early in 2021, we can play on that.
And is that, you're hoping to have all 4 phases done at that time?
We would have the goal would be right now is to have the main field and the second field done, and the press box and the bathrooms done. For construction wise, the press box and bathrooms, that could happen later in the fall even, just because we want to make sure we get the grass and stuff planted. That's going to be probably the biggest constraint.
I guess the last question I had is, of course, with financing, you know, it looks like the high school, or the, the school is pledged for about $253,000. How do you foresee the balance coming? Where is that going to come from?
So the university at this point is planning on the other third, and I guess what I wanted to bring forward to the city council was if there would be willingness to take the other third, so the other 253,000. We are actively, we've met with some leaders in our development team to also privately fundraise to work on that. So that the agreement is that anything that can be fundraised would come off the top of the project. So then the shares that each of the entity would have would be less.
Okay. So we're looking approximately 250 plus for our share.
Right.
I think everybody here knows, you know, we project out as a city 3 to 5 years on capital expenditures, and I guess this would probably fall in that range. Which you agree here? We've got projects kind of on the docket for the next.
That this is not on the
No, it's not.
docket.
That's not it. We've got things that we're, you know, looking at doing, and, you know, if we're to participate in this, what's gonna happen? Are we gonna have to find another project that we were going to do? Or what? I guess that's one thing I thought we should talk about.
Yeah, I guess I like this. I like the joint venture. I like the facility. My question is how can we do it as a city? How can we do this?
Well, and I actually have a couple questions for Brian, and we did talk about this in the park board, and looked at, you know, what their thoughts were as far as whether or not this project was something that the city council should consider. Brian and I talked a little bit about whether or not we could split up our commitment into more than 1 year. Obviously, they're looking at doing something right away this year. We've already committed our budget for this year. If you're gonna look at funding this, it's gonna come out of reserves. So how much reserves do you wanna take? And one of the things that we already know is that we're gonna be bidding some stuff that's gonna come out of reserves this year. Chiswick parking lot, we have some sidewalk things that we wanna do. East Side Park, we're looking at doing. You know, so there's a lot of stuff on the table, but the other question I had too was the timeline for, you know, this is a rough guess of what this might cost. In the park board, we talked about if you do 2 fields and the press box at once, it might reduce the cost. And I would imagine you're gonna put together the RFP to find out, you know, what the costs are gonna be for construction. Any idea what the timeline on that might be?
So we've already started to, the kind of the first steps on, we need to probably bring in a designer, just an architect to drop all the pieces. We have a person on campus who's a registered architect, so he's starting to work on some of this already, and we're just trying to get some estimates already to do some of the design work. Timeline would be, if we were able to continue to move, we would try to get bidding documents probably out April, so that we could construct the middle of the summer, probably July, would be the plan. With that is a really short timeline for design, and again, it's softball field, the specs aren't going to be really, should be too dramatic, and so we think we can design in that time frame. Yeah, we would then have estimates at that point, and Blaine's 100% correct. When we first looked at this, we looked at each project to be an individual, so if we had to do it over multiple years, we've built in kind of a little bit of contingency if we did it that way, so there would be some savings.
What happens, Brian, if the city decides not to go along?
We would go back to the high school and we would work with them to try to figure out maybe we only construct a couple fields and maybe we don't do the restrooms, or we'd have to have some more discussion about that.
Okay. Just pare it down a little bit or whatever. I'm not saying that's what it's gonna be.
No,
but-
and that's a good question, and I think for us and what's outstanding is we would be able to get to have a facility that gets used more than if the university just built one field and we only used it, we use it while the students are here in the spring and in the fall. The wonderful thing about the partnerships that we have across, with the Regional Fitness Center I look at, is those facilities get used all the time. That makes good fields and that makes good facilities, so they get used, so. I think you're right.
So that won't, we currently have fields, nice fields over at Wells Park, obviously Chiswick, and the high school has some up at the school. Those fields are just getting kind of overused, I guess, sort of, or what? I guess how did this come about?
Yeah, so those fields would still be used the same amount as what's with this, because we're replacing the two fields on campus that are used for Little League and kind of Little League softball, all the different leagues that happen. Those get used, but they don't have any lights, so they're really limited. They can only really play a game on them at night or whatever in the spring. And so those are just being replaced by better fields, really, in this scenario. When we looked at the existing softball field that we have on campus, needs some serious work. It needs to be backstopped, the fences need to be moved, it needs to have some dirt work done on the outfield. And so just bringing the high school team to our field doesn't necessarily solve it, because we still need to invest in it. And the discussion that we had both with the high school and with the university is, if we invest in that field, it's still sitting right next to the road. So
Right.
why pour a lot of money into something that really, you still have a field that's in a bad location. So this would allow us to construct new fields that are in the desired location, and probably for about the same amount of dollars that we need to invest in that, in the existing field, and be able to have a much nicer complex. So, and then the high school can join us as well, because we'd be able to build the fences at the right distance for high school and college. So, and the rules allow for that.
You
I
mentioned,
didn't see anything, what's your plans for dugouts on the fields?
The plan right now, you can see there's just a sketch on the first page. It would be cement dugouts with a cage in the front, and then we'd add a small storage part of next to the dugouts as well, so that all the gear and stuff like that can be stored right there. So for whatever we is in. So we put a little. It's a tiny design.
I
But
see that, I missed that.
no, that's okay. It's. So, but they would be cement dugouts with the cage in the front, so that they're as safe as possible for fast pitch softball.
What is our agreement with the high school that uses Chiswick Field? Is those fields are owned by the city, correct?
Right.
Is there a monetary agreement between the fields and just used and is it kept up by the city and just used by the high school?
Well, we do some of the maintenance, but community ed really does the majority of the maintenance on them. And actually, that was a good question that you brought up, because this isn't just about high school softball and college softball. It's about community education too. And in the park board, Tony Reimers talked about how, I guess I wasn't aware of it. I grew up in Morris, but there's a shortage of fields. When we go around and look at the ball diamonds and things on the annual tour in June, you'll see that they're used everywhere. And they actually run out of space for kids to use it. And then you think about it, we have probably one of the best girls softball programs in the state of Minnesota, and they play with temporary fences because the facilities we have are sized for doing more than just girls softball. So if you free up the softball fields that they're using right now, then they can turn around and be used for other things like baseball, little kids baseball, Babe Ruth and things like that. So, you know, it helps a lot of things, but one of the biggest things that I didn't realize, I've been to games out at the university and watched kids crossing streets and stuff like that and sitting on the side of the hill, but those two softball fields, I'm surprised nobody's been hurt really bad, because they're side by side and there's really no protection going back and forth. And that's really something that needs to be considered. We're part of the community ed program. We're a partner in the community ed program. So we do pay money into community education and stuff. You know, this is just, it's an opportunity to put together something that's gonna be used by a lot of people. And not just people that live in Morris, but a lot of people coming to town. One of the questions I asked was, well, what about Wells Park? We just got done doing a lot of work in Wells Park. You know, can't girls softball go play there? Well, it's in the neighborhood and it's really difficult. There is no parking lot over there. So if you imagine a girls' high school region softball tournament at Wells Park, it wouldn't work, you know?
You know, and when we did that to that over there, we really took away any men's or women's league softball that can be played there anymore. It has to be done out at, you know, Chiswick slow pitch softball men's league or.
Well, women's can be played on
Will it
those
be played
fields
on
because
there?
they're the same distance at college, although I think the regulations might be changing a little bit, but the fence, actually the university fields aren't accurate fencing, you know, for women's softball, but they could play there and it works really well for, you know, the summer softball program for them.
Well, I think if, you know, obviously we're gonna consider this at maybe a further meeting or not, we're not prepared to do anything at tonight, are we?
Well, I don't know that we know an amount that we're prepared to commit to, but what I really said to Brian and to Matt Johnson and to Tony Reimers is, you know, let's bring it to the park board, see what they think about it. Let's bring it to the council, see what you think about it. If you think it's a good idea to move forward with this, let's move forward, you know, maybe a motion, you know, to give them direction to move forward, find out what the amounts are gonna be. And then we're right at the end of our fiscal year. So the auditors are gonna be coming in 2 weeks, and we'll know what the year end looks like. We do have money in reserve in our liquor store that we could transfer some. We do have money reserve in our general fund and capital outlay fund. We could maybe transfer a little bit of it. That's what we're talking about doing with Chiswick Field and some of the other ones. And you know, you've been here for my budget meetings, that you never want to commit any reserve money to an ongoing endeavor. You know, so we don't want to commit it to wages and things that we're going to have to pay for every single year. It might be a good opportunity to put something into a community resource that's going to affect a lot of people, and then we'll go from there. But I think they need to know from you if you're interested in doing it, and then we can get the numbers laid out, and then I can talk with them about how it would be funded. And the other question I had is, we wouldn't have any ongoing responsibility for costs on this field like we would with other things that we own.
Yeah, so the university right now mows the fields in the summertime, and then community ed, whoever plays on it, does rakes the diamonds and different things. And then the plan would be that we would develop some we would have a joint use agreement, but that each entity would put a little bit of money in together, whatever, each year, a small amount just for chalk and different things like that. That's, you know, for those kind of things. So we'll have that.
Blaine, you mentioned that you talked about this at the park board. What were their thoughts?
They thought it was a great idea.
I don't see how you can not think, I mean, now
Yeah.
we're separating and putting this great softball complex together, and then we'll have this great baseball complex, and then we have the Wells Park, which serves, you know, kind of the younger kids, but that everybody still can use all the fields, so.
Well,
Budget-wise will be the biggest thing, but.
One of the things that, I don't know we mentioned it here before, but the university baseball team's gonna play on our
Yeah.
baseball field.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Because, you know, it is a really nice, it makes no sense for them to build their own when they can play on a really nice complex.
Well, you know, I'm on the community ed board too, and we hear about the fields not having enough fields. We have a lot of games going on in the summer. It's insane as many games that are going on. And I think it'd be great. I think, you know, it's great for the university, it's great for the high school, but when I look at what should the city do, you know, I'm not so concerned with those two entities more than I am community ed. And community ed is what I think we're part of and what we're adding to this, and I think it'll be tremendous to community ed and everything that's going on here in the city. So I definitely would be for trying to find some funds to help all.
A lot of our programs draw from a 25, 30-mile radius, bringing in the different men's leagues, the women's leagues, the kids softball, our kids little league. I
Junior
know
high softball.
the West, there's a lot of the stuff that comes into our community, so business-wise, for our businesses up and down Main Street, if people are coming in to do this before, after, you know, they're spending time in our town and hopefully spending money, but yeah, it's how people are coming in because we have the facility, so I think we need to pursue and look in to see if we can make this work.
Yeah, I agree, Jeff. I mean, from a revenue standpoint, it's, I think we all know we don't have lakes, we don't have a lot of things here more to attract people, but one thing we do have is a very good park network, and, you know, you can't put a price tag on having a huge regional or state softball tournament here. You just think of the influx of people that's gonna come and support our local restaurants and bars and hotels.
Yes.
And I know Torgy's been very active on trying to promote, and we host a lot of the different regionals or whatever their districts, the things are coming into our community, our neighboring communities that aren't big enough that we share with neighboring Glenwood, you know, with Minnewaska, that we use both facilities, that if we can do more of that by having these facilities, it's just gonna be better for our area.
Well, I think we've invested through the years in our baseball program, and I think it's probably due time that we get the women's athletic program, softball program caught up, really, quite honestly, if you're gonna look at it that way. It's one way to spin it. So yeah, I'd be interested in taking a look at it and see where all the numbers shake out.
Okay, is that a motion, Kevin?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, thank you, Brian.
Brian.
Yeah, for sure.
And thanks for all your work on
Thank you.
it.
Well, thank
We
you.
look forward to more.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, any other citizens' comments? Okay, before we continue on, I make a motion to add 3 items that they were in your emails later, but they're at your place now. Under the consent agenda, item E, application to conduct excluded bingo. And under ordinances and resolutions, let's do a 1-1. The resolution consenting to the issuance of bonds by the city of Scanlon, Minnesota. So that'll be right after A. And then we'll do a resolution G, resolution authorizing fund transfer. And I'll make that a motion to add those.
No second that.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We have no public hearings tonight. We have reading and approval of minutes from our January 14th meeting.
I'll move to approve the regular meetings from January 14th.
I will second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. And we have the same condensed version for the newspaper.
I'll move the approval of the condensed version of the January 14th minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. We have the consent agenda consisting of the audit of city bills, the application for exempt permit for the Minnesota Deer Hunters, revenue and expenditure report for December, and the December 11th library board minutes, and the added application to conduct excluded bingo by the Morris Area Women of Today. I will move approval of the items on the consent agenda.
I will second that.
Any discussion on any of those items?
I just have one question on line item 51, Blaine, where snow lot rental for $2,000 for the Morris Green Company. Where is the bulk of our snow going? Is it all going there, or is it just some, or what's that cost for exactly? I know we're tall and some aren't, we to.
Boy, I couldn't tell you where, I think that's where they try to bring it, is out there. Because we used to bring it up to the elementary school, and we don't anymore, because
Okay.
we don't have access to that property. But, I
I
couldn't
don't know if
tell
any
you.
of it goes to the fairgrounds or not anymore.
I
We
don't,
used to go to the
I
fairgrounds.
don't think there's a lot going out there.
And that's why I asked.
I'm
the
thinking it's more than just that spot, but just the traffic and
I can
saving the
check
stuff
on
that's
it.
on the north end of town, I think, is taken there, but I still think we use the fairgrounds, but I'm not sure.
Okay, that was, yeah, if you can just get back to us on that, that'd be great. That's all I have.
Line item 61, the solar illuminations, the $1,070, is that for a system or is that for
That's
multiple?
for a system for
That's what
one
I was
sign.
thinking,
Yeah,
just-
so we'll try to see how it works.
Okay.
Is it in process, or?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
If it works and we don't pay a fee if we have the big battery in the sky to charge it.
right.
I mean,
Well, and I think I had mentioned in my newsletter that there's some places where you'd have to go across the highway to get to electricity. You know,
Under the
and
highway.
that's just not a good option, so.
Put the street light up on 59 going south by that little back road that you go in, you know, if you're headed towards North 59, before the bridge, there, it's a solar street light,
That was
where the
probably,
carrot plant is.
that's
back
probably
one.
Bill Clevey, I bet.
No, okay.
No,
Is that-
Over
is
by the
that all-
bridge, is he
Over
on 59 and 28 on the corner?
No,
No.
back up further that way, where,
59 and Fairgrounds Road.
It wasn't,
yes.
I have no idea.
Because that looks to be all solar too.
Yeah, it is, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, I'll have to go look.
I'm sure that's, MnDOT has something to do with that, but
Okay.
might be worth asking them.
Yeah, they do them out in the country, you know, at intersections and things like that now, LED lights.
Any other discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. We have boards and commission appointments. I can do this, can I? I make a motion to appoint Peter Bremer, Sheldon Gies, and Amalia Flugel to 3-year terms for the library board, and Donna Wesson reappointed for a 3-year term on the community education board.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Bond refinancing. Nick is here.
Nick is here.
the money man.
Good evening. Good evening. I have a little visual aid here in the handout. Here to discuss reducing debt costs for the city. So Nick Amhut with Ehlers and Associates, for financial advisors to the city. It's good to be before you all again this early in the year. Part of our service to the city, we monitor the existing marketplace, where interest rates are at, look for opportunities to cut down your debt service costs and get refinancing opportunities. This action today is a resolution for the council to consider to set a sale of bonds to refinance 4 existing series of debt, 3 of which finance various street and utility projects within the city, and then also to refinance the fire equipment financing that we executed last year. As you remember last year, that was a 10-year bond. We paid over a 10-year period. We were able to obtain about a 3.35% interest rate, which was actually pretty good at the time, and now we're looking at rates in the low 2s in the marketplace. So I think there is an opportunity here to cut down on some debt service costs. We've also had discussions with staff. Several of these bonds were issued back in 2010, 2011. They have accumulated some balances in the debt service funds as you've levied, received assessment revenues. You've had some balances over and above what you needed to pay out in debt service. Those are restricted for debt service, and you would eventually use them at the end of the life of the bond. So with the refinancing opportunity, we can put that cash in now, pay down some of the balance a little bit earlier, and then you can unlock further savings by having less principal outstanding to accrue against. So there's about 1.96 million in bonds outstanding that we're looking to refinance between those 4 different issues. They're carrying rates between 2.6 and 4% right now. That's what you're paying on. We've identified about $179,000 within the various debt service funds that can be used. You have plenty of reserve to cover your payments right now. Those are essentially in excess that you'd wait until the end of those bonds to use that. We can apply those, reduce your balances, and look at reducing future payments by about $240,000. So on net, about a savings of $61,000. The longest bond outstanding goes out to the year, tax levy year 28. The majority of them are being repaid within about a 4 and 5 year time horizon. So most of that savings you'll be realizing in the next 4 to 5 years. So in short, we think this is a fairly good time. Rates are very low. They've been that way. They've actually been trending that way in the latter portion of last year, and they've continued on in January. This is a time of the year where there is a little bit of lull in the marketplace as cities are gearing up for their spring construction projects. They'll be looking to flood the market, in the April-May timeframe. So we're a little bit ahead of that, which means this is a good opportunity because there's more demand from banks. And we're proposing a very similar process to what we did last year. We do a limited distribution of an RFP to local banks, statewide banks, who are interested in this type of financing. Set up a structure so that we're able to amortize the same way that you're amortizing the debt today. And so we'll just be able to take advantage of that lower interest rate to reduce your future levy obligations. Those banks will provide proposals that we'll present to you at your second meeting in February on the 25th for the council to take action to award using the most favorable proposal, the best rate available. Be happy to address any of your questions, but that's essentially the resolution that's in front of you this evening.
Time-wise, nothing is stretched out. We're gonna continue to pay. Everything will be paid off in the same time frame, pretty much what we're currently paying, and just reducing the interest rate. Correct?
Exactly. So we'll leave the structure of each one of those issues intact. We're just trying to cut down on the amount of interest that you'll have to pay in a given year.
Thank you.
On the monies of the 179, the debt service that we're not able to use until the end of the bond process, does that accumulate any interest, or does that just sit there interest-free in our accounts?
You're able to invest those monies. It does have to stay fairly liquid, and I guess I would rely on Deb to shed a little bit more light on that.
You do?
Without that, I use it over the life of the bond, so we use a little bit of it every year.
Okay. Well, I like it. I mean, anytime we can restructure and use that and reduce our interest, we must be looking at low 2s, and like I said, we're seeing 3.5, 3.6, 3.35. I mean, if we're dropping a point of interest, it's a lot when you're talking about $2 million. So I'll make a motion to accept the resolution providing for the sale of 1.825 million GOP refunding bond series 20208.
I'll second.
Go ahead, Kim.
I'll second that.
Great. Any further questions of Nick? Thank you, Nick. It was a great explanation.
Another question for Nick. It's not on this, so if you want to just hang out until
Okay.
you're done with this.
All right. Thanks. Any other comments or questions? We'll have roll call vote on the resolution, please.
Councilmember Salvi?
Yes.
Waller?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Pellickson? Yes. Mayor Heath?
Yes.
So actually,
Good
the
question.
add-on, there's a resolution giving consent to another bond issue. Carol's here to talk about. I actually sent the information to Nick, so Nick could look at it and just give you his advice on that. But this is a case where, from time to time, we've been asked to actually sell bonds, healthcare bonds, and I think everybody here has been part of that. Well, now they're refinancing and doing some other things too, so they're looking for us to help with just an action to consent to what they're trying to do. So if you want to step in and
Carol
Carol.
Rossi, Francis Health Services CEO here in Morris, Minnesota. So graciously, the city allowed us to issue bonds or to receive the issuance of bonds in 2012 and 2015. Both were for construction projects in Duluth, Minnesota, Viewcrest Health Center. We have done another project there. We're almost completing that project to the tune of about $7 million. And so we would like to refinance the existing debt that's outstanding, which includes these two issuances, and then we'll be issuing the new debt through the city of Scanlon because it's in the same community or same county as our Viewcrest property.
We're obviously are able to issue enough and still have enough. Do
yeah,
you have any other projects going on that?
Yeah, this
we're
one-
gonna go to 10 million?
You're actually releasing.
we're actually releasing our giving our consent for them to pay off a couple bonds that we did before.
In 2012 and 2015.
So I don't know if you had a chat. Yeah, there's really no reason why you wouldn't do it.
Correct, so the bonds are in the city's name as it were today, and you're essentially consenting for them to redeem them. And then they would transfer to Scanlon data to the bond in their name.
But just one further disclosure, the bonds that occurred in 2012 and 2015 were very complex bonds. They were a series of AB and the original 15 and 15, and then in 2012 they were also 3 different series, and so we're looking for release of just one portion of the 2012 and one portion of the 2015 series, and that's what's identified in the resolution.
I'm glad you keep track of this. Great. Any questions of Carol? So we can bring it back to the council for the resolution?
I will make the motion consenting to the issuance of bonds. Is that where we want to do it, right
Yep.
at the top of this here?
Yep.
Of bonds by the city of Scanlon, Minnesota, which refund notes previously issued by the city. Is that what we need?
Well said, Brian.
Yep, that's it.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion?
And everything has been looked over by our attorneys that this is fine and we're in good shape on this?
Yeah, well, we're basically releasing them from what they did before, so that, yeah.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Carol. Any further discussion? We'll have roll call vote on this resolution, please.
Councilmember Miller?
Yes.
Pellickson?
Yes.
Wallers?
Yes.
Salvi?
Yes.
Mayor Heath?
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay.
Thanks, Carol. Yeah.
Yeah, all right, sounds good. Resolution approving an updated emergency operations plan. I'm sure everybody had a chance to read through Blaine's 5 emails.
And you don't don't know what was changed.
Yeah, so I actually went onto the county's YouTube page and watched the presentation that Donna made to the county board. And part of the change that was made was the fact that we're now part of the emergency operation plan. So Reggie's designated as a deputy manager underneath the system. They have a new chief deputy, Jason Reed. So there's some language that had to be changed in there. She talked about working on a recovery plan that's going to be part of the plan, records retention. Chicago and Donley now have sirens, the way it sounded, that were part of it. There's a basic plan for media that they're working on. And they have an updated exercise plan for 2020. It looks like they're going to do an active threat exercise in 2020. So that's the gist of it.
Great, I think that makes sense for us to basically piggyback on their emergency operations plan. I will move approval of the resolution approving an updated emergency operation plan.
I will second.
Any discussion? We'll have roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gullikson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Salvi?
Yes.
Wallers?
Yes.
Mayor Heath?
Yes. We have a resolution authorizing the soliciting of qualifications for airport engineering. It's been 5 years
5
since we
years
did that?
since we did this, yeah. I thought that was pretty interesting too, but, so what the FAA requires is you simply have to advertise and solicit qualifications for engineers. It has nothing to do about cost. It's simply their qualifications. And then once you have that, you read out the qualifications. It could be that every engineering firm that applies is gonna qualify and get a maximum number of points. And then you get to pick who you want as your engineer. So obviously we have a working relationship with TKDA, but the interesting part about it is when you're doing the qualifications, you list out, as you can see in the request for qualifications, you list out all the things that you're gonna be working on. And they have to provide information about, do they have the capabilities of dealing with all those things? And I think the last time we got 3 solicitations. I think Bolton and Mink has airport engineers, TKDA, there's maybe 1 or 2 other firms that even have airport engineers that might put in a solicitation and answer this request. So the first step is to authorize me to go and advertise it. And then we'll take a look at what comes in and bring back a recommendation for you. But we cannot do any additional work right now at the airport until we get this done. Because there's no engineer is gonna be allowed to do anything until we go through this process. It's kinda interesting how it works.
I will move a request for qualifications on our airport consultant services for the Morse Municipal Airport in Morse.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Just one other quick note, I said that we don't consider cost. But you pick an engineer and then the next thing is gonna be probably the design work on the airport runway extension. They'll give us a cost estimate for that. And then we have to take that and we have to solicit another engineering firm to give us a cost estimate, and we have to compare them. So it's gotta be, they can't be tied to them, and so that's how you have a check and balance on what they actually charge you for engineering. It's kind of complicated, but.
Great, thank you. Uh-oh.
But once we've determined everyone that's qualified, we can pick from that pool if they're all equal by
Yep.
other issues.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, any other comments or questions on the resolution? We'll have roll call vote on this resolution, please.
Councilmember
Yes.
Talby,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Mayor Case.
Yes. We have a resolution approving a respectful workplace policy for the city of Morris.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this is it covers everybody that operates within our workplace, including elected officials and appointed officials, boards, commissions. So if you had a chance to look through this, you're gonna see all the different kinds of things that might be considered and then what the processes are. If it's me, that's the focus of it, then the city attorney would work with the council. If it's a council member, you know, it would be the city attorney working with that process. If it's an employee, depending on what it was and how far up it goes, would dictate how it's going to be handled. But the other thing you're going to notice in there is there's a lot of new terminology that we deal with in this day and environment that we're in, and I think this does a very good job of identifying that and trying to make everybody understand, you know, what their responsibilities within this. If approved, then what I'll do is I'll sit down with the department heads and we'll start the distribution process of making sure this gets out to everybody, including board and commission members, and then we'll have it in place so that we can utilize it.
Do you ever have training for your staff, for the staff and department heads on diffusing, maybe it's not an issue, but some of these, the first one, customer behavior, disrespectful behavior, might not have been an issue, but is there ever
Well,
discussion other than here's the policy handbook?
We really haven't, but, you know, in our safety committee, we talk about that. Actually, we've talked with Reggie about that. Because quite frankly, there are times that people come in that maybe you get nervous about. You know, I've had it in my office. I know up front they've had individuals that they've dealt with, and we've talked about doing more training like that. You know, and so this is a good step to identify that. But I think it's just important for everybody to know and understand that, you know, there is a place to go if you think there's a problem. And then we meet every week with staff. We meet every month with the safety committee, and that's the department heads. And within each department, they have their own responsibilities for dealing with their people in their workplaces.
So you, up to this point, you haven't really had a policy in place that addressed any of these issues? Or?
We had an old sexual harassment policy that was in place before, and then when I came here, one of the things I noticed really quick, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I noticed that we had a handbook for employees, but the handbook for employees, in my perspective, was not correct. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is we have unions. So unions have union contracts, and union contracts dictate exactly what the process is. I'll give you one quick example. We have a city manager form of government. The city manager is responsible for hiring, firing, taking care of all issues in the union contract. You can appeal up to a department head and then up to the city manager. From there, it goes to mediation, and from there, it goes to arbitration. It never comes to the city council. But in the handbook, it said that you could appeal it to the city council. Well, that didn't make any sense. And there were other things that were in there too, that, you know, how you deal with certain things within the employee system. And so we got away from that handbook, went to the union contracts, and then we have separate policies for certain things. And some of them are mandated by federal law, like the Family and Medical Leave Act. That's a federal law. We have to follow it. It's not a city policy. So there's things like that, and that's the way the sexual harassment was in the handbook, and we want to get it into its own policy. so that it's clear, you know, that this is the way we're gonna work it. And this was actually partly done through League of Minnesota Cities samples. It was, there were some other resources that we used, and Aaron looked it over to make sure he was comfortable with it, you know, because he's got to play a role in this too, and we do have confidential employees, both in the law enforcement, police department, and in City Hall that work with the personnel records that are not part of a union, and so that's part of it.
Excuse me.
I think it's good to have something like this, get it more updated and in line with what we're trying to do. I'll move on that resolution. Approving that resolution, approving the respectful workplace policy for the city of Morris.
I will second that.
Any further discussion? We'll have roll call vote on the resolution, please.
Councilmember Salvi,
Yes.
Wallers,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Tillotson,
Yes.
Mayor Heath.
Yes. Resolution authorizing submission of a 2020 pay equity
This
report.
is a state requirement that we have every 30 years. The last time we did it was in 2017. It's a fairly straightforward process that you go through. They have the software program where you load everything in. The only difference is, you know, from time to time, we might adjust positions that we have. The last report we had, we didn't have a sergeant position that was filled in the law enforcement. Actually, technically, as of 2019, December 31st, we did, and then our sergeant left. But it's a computer-generated software program that you load the data in, and you run the calculations, and it'll tell you where you need to be and where you're at. So you are provided the documents that came out of that. I had mentioned in the memo, you know, we have male classes, we have female classes. Actually, one of the things I will share with you, it's a state of Minnesota pay equity plan, and they have males and they have females. And that is no longer the case. If you just saw our respectful workplace policy, we have more than males and females that we would recognize. And so I actually, I did contact the state of Minnesota and asked them, you know, what their plan is to deal with the fact that there are people nowadays that don't necessarily fit into one of those classes. And so I think they're gonna take a look at it and update their forms, but that's the way the form's set up. So it looks at male-dominated classes, female-dominated classes, that you take the pay, and it's all calculated in the system, and it'll tell you if you're over or under the predicted pay for that position based upon the points that are assigned to that position. And it only addresses female classes when it comes to being underpaid. So if you're consistently underpaying female classes, then you have to make an adjustment. They look at an underpayment ratio of 80%. We're actually at 207%. If we're under 80%, we'd either have to make an adjustment or go to a secondary calculation to determine. But that's one of the reasons why you always hear me talk about when we're doing union negotiations and stuff. If you keep all the pay increases equal in percentage, your system slides up. If you're doing individual increases, then you really need to come back and do these calculations, because you might wind up underpaying too many positions, and then you're gonna have to come back and make adjustments. As far as I know, in my career, I've never ever had to adjust a class, and I've been doing this for 30 years. I remember when pay equity first came in, but so we're good. We should be perfectly fine on our pay equity report. And then you can see the graph that kind of shows where we're at pay-wise. We're right a little bit above, a little bit below. You can see what all the positions are in the city, and you can see what the pay is in the city. Now, we do have positions that have pay scales. We have positions that don't have pay scales. It's the way it's been. When I was in Breckenridge, it was the same way. If you went to the county, I think there's a pay scale for every single pay classification that there is, that they go through. But, and the reason there's number of years of service on some of them, not others, is if there's a pay years to max to get to the max, then you don't have to put that in there. If there isn't, they want to know how long these people have been there. And some of them have been working with the city a long time, more than this, but it's strictly within the position. So we had a couple new positions that came in, sustainability project coordinator. We actually added a wastewater supervisor classification, didn't add another employee. We just adjusted one employee to fit in that one, put the police sergeant back, and I can't remember what the other one was. We upgraded the transit coordinator to a supervisor. And the one thing I would tell you is that the pay equity system we use it's been around for a long time. We haven't gone through a full-blown reclassification, re-rating of all the positions in the city. If you want to do that, you can. It costs a lot of money to do that. But what I've found is that we have 10 criteria we use for judging points. For me, as a city manager, it seems to work really well. You know, to be able to sit down and look at a job and how many people is this person going to supervise? You know, if they work in an office, it's a pretty good working condition. If they work out in the public works, it's probably not as good a working condition. So we do go through that process of looking at points when we're rating things out. So it seems to be working pretty good for us. Like I said, I don't see any issues with us being found in compliance. And then we'll post these, if you approve it, we'll post the results in the various work so that the employees can see it.
Elaine, do we currently have anybody in positions right now where they don't have the appropriate education level? Let's say, for example, I know you have education requirements for different positions, and I don't know if that's something you evaluate.
Head librarian is in a position that the pay will go up if that individual completes a master's degree, I think. You know, so that is one. Otherwise, I'm not aware. I mean, we look at it from time to time, you know, and actually I think the Civil Service Commission is probably going to look at law enforcement in some cases, but we did take a look at that, you know, what the requirements are, you know, for a position and not for the person, because sometimes you run into a person that, you know, worked their way into a job or whatever, but if that person left, who would you be looking to hire?
How, the complexity of duties, is that a set, I mean, how is that just like, if they're here, they're get this many points, or how is that?
Yeah, there's actual criteria that
So
kind of
that's
lays
that.
that out, you know, so if you go to work every day and you do your job and there's really not a lot of change to it, that's one thing. If you go to work and it could be just about anything could come up and you have to try to figure it out, and, you know, so some jobs are much less complex when you deal with that kind of stuff. And I can tell you that sometimes you sit down and you have to try to argue it out, fight it out a little bit. You know, where do you want to be? You know, and in some cases, I can tell you that employees might think this is their job, but it really isn't. They don't have the authority to make that decision, even though you might think you're making that decision. You know, you have to try to keep those lines in place so that you're not crossing them. and again, I think the system works pretty good to do that. I think we made a couple good adjustments to put some people in positions to better utilize them and their skill set, and realize, I'll just throw one out there, the Public Works Director. When I first started in 1980, we had 2 supervisors. We had a utility superintendent, we had a Public Works Director, we had foremen in every single department, parks, streets, water, and then we rolled it under one person, and the ability to do all that stuff under one job just wasn't working. Especially nowadays with all the complexities that you have with state mandated reporting and all the, we're MS4 for stormwater and stuff. So you do have the ability to look at that and try to put things into the right place. And some people should have got credit for what they're doing a long time ago, and that's something that we took a look at.
Okay, good. We have the resolution to act on for authorizing the submission of the pay equity report.
I will move the resolution authorizing the submission of the 2020 pay equity report.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? We'll have roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
Gullikson,
Yes.
Wallace,
Yes.
Salvi,
Yes.
Mayor Gies.
Yes. We have a resolution appointing judges for the March 3rd, 2020 presidential nomination party election. I first would like to say I really thank the people that are stepping up to do this, the election judges. So when you go to the polls, be nice to them. They're taking time out of their lives to learn about it and to do it right. So I will move the resolution appointing judges for the presidential nomination party election on March 3rd.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh wait, that's a resolution, sorry. We'll have a roll call vote on the resolution, please.
Councilmember Gullikson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Salvi,
Yes.
Wallace,
Yes.
Mayor Gies.
Yes. We have the added resolution authorizing fund transfer from the capital outlay to the central garage for a pressure washer.
I'll make a motion approving the resolution authorizing the fund transfer.
I'll second.
Any discussion? We'll have a roll call vote on that resolution, please.
Councilmember Wallace,
Yes.
Salvi,
Yep.
Gullikson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Mayor Gies.
Yes. City manager report.
So I'm just going to answer any questions you might have on my report, but before I do that, I just wanted to recognize, and he had to leave, unfortunately, but they did announce that the investigation found out who initiated the bomb threat that was at the school. Can't tell you anything about, I don't even know anything about it because they're juveniles, and that'll all take place in the juvenile court system and everything. And the school will have the ability to do some things in the school. But I just think it's important to note that they did a very professional job from start to finish, trying to figure it out and taking care of all that. And I told Reggie that this morning at staff, and it's kind of nice to know that you have people that can deal with something like that and take care of it, so you don't hopefully have to worry about it in the future. And Brian's here, and obviously the university plays a big role in helping take care of the school and having a place to go, and everybody works really well together. I think it's a really good indication of the community that we have. So I'll answer any questions you might have on other stuff, otherwise I'll let you go.
I like the looks of that solar power just on doing a group or a community. I really think that makes sense, instead of everybody trying to do their own little thing, that if you can purchase into a larger system. So great, hopefully we keep working on that.
The more sign lighting, where's that first one gonna
I
go?
don't know if,
We haven't decided
I
yet?
don't know if we decided exactly where that one's gonna go. Where do you want it to go?
On the south one, what do you think?
South one down by the industrial park?
Yeah. By MnDOT out there?
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, you get a
Okay.
lot more, I don't know, maybe you would.
Yeah.
I live in town.
Work over that way?
Doesn't work.
I'd say the 28 and 59 one, but that.
That's one that I
I
was
think
thinking
out on the
about too.
bypass,
Bypass.
the bypass, you got the traffic coming in,
That'll
but
be right up my.
hopefully we like the looks of it and we figure out that that's the way to go and we'll get a couple more of them.
Yeah. Yeah, good. I did have a question. Unfortunately, Reggie's gone. We had a few organizations fail the compliance check for alcohol in town this last go round, and a discussion came up that we haven't had server training for a long time. It used to be that the Morris Police Department would actually put that on, I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I was going to ask Reggie, but he's not here. But if you would relay that to
Yep.
Reggie and see what his position is on that, because I'm not sure, but we should certainly, because of the failures, we should certainly do that again. Anything else?
One last question, well, for Blaine. On the Lead Minnesota thing that Archie introduced to you, Blaine, did she indicate any monies that they were looking for at all in that program?
Yeah. Well, it depends on how many, so Fergus Falls, I think, is gonna host, I don't know if you've heard about this program, Brian, I haven't had a chance to talk to you, but, I think Fergus Falls is gonna host a member, and I think they have 4 local organizations, but it was like $7,500 a piece that it costs them, but this person would be there for 2 years. And then, it's part of the AmeriCorps program. And it's one of those things where, we got a chance to talk to her and she'll come back. She came here because she heard about us. They're looking for places that are active communities. They're not looking to go into a community that's doing nothing. They're looking for communities that are active and trying to do things. And then trying to match up people that can either be from the community or I always think of somebody like Sydney Bauer as a perfect candidate for that program, because she would fit right in with what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I checked out the website for
Yeah.
the Lead program and read a little bit about it. Looks like a decent enough program, it's got some merit, so I was just wondering what kind of dollars. You said $7,500?
Yeah, but it depends. If you can get more partners to be part of it, then
That's like a sponsorship fee for this then? You pay the $7,500 to get the 2-year
Yeah.
intern? Or the 2-year paid
Yeah, it's-
fellowship or whatever?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Anything else?
Oh, no. No, it can wait.
We're here, Brian. We're here, Kevin.
Well, it's actually a kind of a question I meant to ask with regards to the softball complex issue. I know we're currently giving money to the community ed program, and it seems to me I got 30,000 stuck in my head. Is that what it is?
No, it's more like 54. We're giving 30 to SCIC, right around 26,
Something, yeah.
right in there. But no, it's closer to $50,000, 45.
That we're currently giving them?
Yep.
Okay, so they were actually considered a partner in this 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, correct, community ed, or is that just us?
No.
School.
University, high school, and us.
Just us three, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we'll have that commitment to the community ed in addition to whatever we do with, okay.
Right.
All right. I just wanted to
Yeah,
put
that, and when you talk about using reserves, that would, where the reserves would go continuously to community ed, but they go to the one-time project, so that's how we can
Right.
justify using reserves for that versus an ongoing.
Right.
So in our bond refinancing, there was that sum of like 179,000 is sitting there, and we're looking at, I just
Yeah.
throwing it around, and we're financing, is that a possible option, or does that money need to go to pay that debt? I mean, just looking at options for us a month down the road.
You're talking about the excess.
The excess funds that we have, I think it showed like about 179.
Oh, yeah, that's
Use
all,
that to pay
that's all goes into the bond funds.
That's why I assumed,
Yeah.
I just,
savings that we have from doing the refinancing, obviously. You know,
Yeah,
your-
that's 60 grand, whatever, yeah.
Levy is much. But
Yeah.
the money that's there it's money that has to be used towards the debt.
And we do, you know,
And that's-
every year we hear from our auditors, you know, we do have a fairly healthy reserve. So, but I certainly don't mean we need to knock it down, but if we can sort of maintain that, you know, maybe even stretching it over a couple of years or something, and
Do we have
that'd be wonderful.
do you have to have so much in a reserve, or can you only have so much in a reserve? Because I know.
No, it's all,
that have to-
you know, there was a point in the past where, the legislature got very interested in how much money
Yeah,
you had in
that's-
reserve, because they're providing us funding. It's like so that theoretically, that is something you wanna look at, but I would always argue, but we're fiscally conservative with our money, so. And in some cases, if we got, like with me, if we got a lot of extra money in LGA, we would still do things the way we would do them if we didn't really have a lot of money. And then that excess money, we might do a one-time thing, and then the next year you use part of it to balance your budget, then you use part of it to balance your budget. You know, and so that's really what it's there for. We have 30, what's our percentage for reserve? I can't remember.
Right now,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't remember either.
it's like 35% in a budget reserve.
That sounds right.
yeah.
You know, there's some places that 100% reserve, and it's like, why are you dealing with all that money?
That's why I asked,
You
because
know.
it's like, is there a point where we say, hey, if we get, 40% of our budget in a reserve, the rest is, we can.
Yeah,
well,
so
we
what,
don't wanna keep
so what we, I don't wanna keep you here very long, but, so what we did was, we picked an amount, and we said, this is what we're gonna have in our general fund budget reserve, and then the excess can get moved to the capital outlay fund, we can use it to pay for things. And then the Government Accounting Standards Board decided, you know what, we don't like that, so they make us roll everything back into one fund for auditing purposes. So when you look at our general fund right now, there's like $3.7 million in the general fund reserve. Now, our budget's $4 million, so how much do you need for a reserve? You know, but, you know, that you just have to be very careful with that.
but the state has delayed sending us our payments too.
Right.
On years, so sometimes you need to be living off of that until you get your next.
Right.
Sort of like your check at home, you're getting paid every 2 weeks, and all of a sudden the boss says,
Yeah, and then
"Got checks for you this week."
Gotta
So-
wait for
the one year, our local government aid, what came in December, and the 1 year they cut it. So we're already through our budget year, and they cut the aid. And how they got away with doing that was just beyond me, because it's like, now where are you gonna get the money? We didn't get all the money that we're supposed to get, that was a while ago. But right now, there's no levy limits, there's no talk about doing anything like that, you know, so, you know, one of the things I mentioned is we're getting ready to do our audit. We don't know what the end of the liquor store looks like for the year, if we made some money. If we made some money, we could use that money, and it doesn't change our reserves, so there's all kinds of things we can take a look at. And I would just add one last piece, actually Nick was here tonight. One of the things that we have coming up is probably a refurbishing of the fire truck, the ladder truck. Could be very expensive, $150,000, but we can levy a tax to borrow money to do that, because it's a major increase to that piece of equipment, to the point where we could actually borrow money against it. Not many places you could go borrow money on a car that you're trying to fix up, but fire truck, we could do that.
But we've talked to replace that, it's gonna be $1 million
Yeah,
plus,
million
or we
too.
can fix it for $150 and basically have
Right.
it refurbished and be like a new truck again.
So,
So it's a pretty cheap
so we
investment, I
were
think, on our
talking
part
about
to do that.
reserve money, but we could talk about doing a 10-year certificate of debt, you know, to do that. We can't do that with this for the softball fields, just because of the nature of what it is. So we'll take a look at it and try to find the best mix.
Good. Anything else? Meeting adjourned.